In 1972, Berry Gordy, the most powerful man in black music, heard a song from his own biggest star and said, word for word, "This is the worst record I've ever heard in my life," and tried to bury it. He lost that fight, and the song he hated became one of the most important records ever made. And that is just one story out of 10 you're about to hear tonight. Stories about songs that got banned from the radio, songs that got artists boycotted and picketed outside their own concerts, and one song that literally helped create a national holiday signed by a sitting president. Welcome to Blue Rhythm R&B, the channel where we dig past the greatest hits playlist and into the real, documented history behind the music. No filler, no fluff, just the receipts. Tonight we're counting down 10 R&B songs from 1970 to 1985 that didn't just climb the charts, they rattled Motown executives, got quietly edited by nervous radio stations, drew the attention of the Black Panthers, the Knock-Up, and even the Nixon White House. So stick around, because number one on this list involves a song so controversial, the man who wrote it had to fake being on strike from his own record label just to get it released. Number 10. The Chi Lights were known in 1971 as one of the smoothest, sweetest soul groups in Chicago. The kind of group that made you slow dance, so nobody expected their next move to be a raw, synthesizer-driven protest record aimed straight at the government. But that's exactly what lead singer and songwriter Eugene Record delivered with "For God's Sake, Give More Power to the People," a title track so blunt it left no room for interpretation, dropping right in the thick of Vietnam-era unrest. And it was directly inspired by the same wave of politically charged soul coming out of Sly and the Family Stone and fellow Chicagoan Curtis Mayfield. This wasn't the Chi Lights everybody expected, the group that would soon give the world the tender ballad "Have You Seen Her?" And that contrast is exactly what made the record land so hard. A group famous for love songs was now demanding accountability from Washington, layering aggressive, almost distorted synth stabs under lyrics about a system failing its people, and radio programmers, who booked the Chi Lights for slow jams, suddenly had a protest anthem in their rotation. The song climbed to number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a genuine hit on black radio, proving that even a group built on falsetto love ballads could pivot into pure social commentary and have America listen. It's a reminder that the biggest political statements of the era didn't always come from the artists you'd expect. So here's a group most people only remember for heartbreak songs, kicking off tonight's list at number 10 by demanding power for the people, decades before that phrase became a slogan everywhere else. Number 9. By 1971, Mavis Staples and her family had already spent a decade marching literally alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., performing at civil rights rallies across the South. So when Stax songwriters Mac Rice and Luther Ingram cooked up a blunt, no-nonsense anthem after Ingram griped that black folk need to learn to respect themselves, there was only one family qualified to sing it with real authority. Respect Yourself wasn't just a catchy title, it was a direct callback to the Staple family's own history. Pop Staples had refused to eat in the back of restaurants on tour through the segregated South, and here was his daughter Mavis now singing a song that took aim at empty political promises and hypocrisy. At one point, pointedly referencing how politicians talk endlessly about problems like pollution, while doing nothing to fix them. The song landed at number 2 on the soul chart and became an anthem embraced far beyond black audiences, picked up by the women's liberation movement as their own rallying cry about dignity and self-worth, which is a wild crossover for a song that started as a Stax studio conversation about frustration in the black community. What makes this one hit different is that it wasn't manufactured controversy, it was lived controversy, sung by a family who had personally marched with King and buried friends lost to the movement, giving every line a weight that a less battle-tested group simply couldn't have carried. Coming in at number 9, Respect Yourself, proved that sometimes the most political song in the room is the one that just tells you to stand up straight and believe in yourself. Number 8. In the spring of 1970, The Temptations released a song so loaded with political and social commentary that Motown itself got nervous.
And it seems nobody's interested in learning.
Ball of Confusion. That's what the world is today. A track that name-checked segregation, so-called white flight out of cities, drug abuse, air pollution, and the ongoing chaos of the Vietnam War, all stacked into one relentless groove, written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong. Here's the twist most fans don't know. This same songwriting team had already handed the Temptations an even more explosive anti-war song months earlier. But Motown got cold feet, worried that such a provocative "Take No Prisoners" lyric would damage the polished crossover image the Temptations had spent years building, so that other song got quietly shelved and handed instead to a less established singer named Edwin Starr, a story we'll circle back to later on this list. Ball of Confusion was the version of political commentary Motown was willing to let the Temptations keep, carefully framed as an observation of chaos rather than a direct verdict on who was to blame, ending each verse by simply stating that nobody really knows where the world is headed. Even watered down compared to what they originally wanted to release, the song still hit number 3 on the R&B chart and became one of the most sampled, most quoted political soul records of the era. Proof that even Motown's safest version of protest music still landed like a gut punch in 1970 America. At number 8, this is the song that exists specifically because Motown was too scared to release the other one. And trust me, that other one is coming. Number 7. In October 1972, James Brown, Soul Brother number 1, the godfather of soul, walked into the Oval Office and shook hands with Richard Nixon, publicly endorsing his re-election. And what almost nobody in that room knew was that behind closed doors, Nixon had told an aide, on tape, "No more black stuff, don't bring them in here," before reluctantly agreeing to the meeting because an advisor insisted Brown's influence with black voters was simply too big to ignore. When the endorsement went public, the backlash was immediate and brutal. Sold-out 13,000-seat venues suddenly drew crowds of 2,500. Protesters picketed outside his shows in Cincinnati, holding signs that read, "James Brown, Nixon's clown." And even the Congressional Black Caucus publicly condemned the exploitation of what they called politically naive entertainers. Brown, stung but defiant, told reporters flatly that he wasn't selling out, he was selling in. Yet the damage was real enough that he quietly skipped Nixon's second inauguration entirely, later blaming it on fatigue rather than admit the boycott had actually worked. 2 years later, with Nixon disgraced and gone after Watergate, Brown flipped the script completely, releasing the funk classic, "Funky President, People It's Bad," in 1974, aimed at new President Gerald Ford, a song that hit number 4 on the R&B charts, and doubled as Brown's quiet apology to the community he'd alienated, even calling for black economic ownership and reparations in its lyrics. At number 7, this is the story of the godfather of soul's biggest political gamble, and the funky comeback record he used to win his audience back. Number 6. 1975, the Isley Brothers walked into Kendune Recorders in Los Angeles to cut a song guitarist Ernie Isley had been sitting on. Inspired straight off the evening news, and when lead singer Ron Isley got to the key line about all this bullshit going down, his own brother Ernie was reportedly stunned. He actually said it on tape. When asked why he didn't clean it up, Ron simply said, "Because it needed to be said. It's what people want to hear." That single word forced radio stations across the country to scramble, quietly censoring or bleeping the profanity during airplay, while the uncensored version spread like wildfire on black-owned stations and in clubs, turning "Fight the Power" into one of the rare mainstream hits where everybody in the room knew exactly which word was getting cut out. The song wasn't just profanity for shock value either. It was a direct statement about artists being silenced, about red tape and bureaucracy standing between people and real answers, delivered by a trio who recorded their lead vocals live, together, in a single take, capturing raw, unfiltered emotion instead of studio polish. Despite, or maybe because of, the censorship drama, "Fight the Power" shot to number 1 on the R&B chart and landed at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of the defining protest anthems of the mid-70s, and eventually the direct namesake and spiritual ancestor of a certain Public Enemy song 16 years later. At number 6, this is the Isley Brothers proving that sometimes the most controversial word in a song is exactly the reason it becomes immortal. Number 5. Curtis Mayfield watched an early screening of the 1972 blaxploitation film Superfly and walked out disgusted, reportedly calling it an infomercial for cocaine, furious that a movie about a drug dealer trying to pull off one last big score was going to glamorize exactly the lifestyle destroying his own community. So instead of walking away from the project, he decided to fight it from the inside. Mayfield wrote and recorded an entire soundtrack designed to work against the film's glossy visuals, and the standout track, Freddie's Dead, told the story of a small-time hustler chewed up and discarded by the very drug game the movie made look cool, while Pusherman put listeners inside the mind of a dealer without ever endorsing what he did. Mayfield later explained he wanted the music to act almost like a narrator's conscience running underneath the film, stopping kids from reading it as glamorous. It worked almost too well commercially. Freddie's Dead hit number 2 on the R&B chart and number 4 on the Hot 100, and the soundtrack actually out-earned the movie itself, briefly knocking The Godfather off the top of the box office, but it also drew fire from groups like the Knockip, whose Beverly Hills Hollywood branch president Junius Griffin coined the term blaxploitation specifically to call out films like this one for exploiting black audiences while pretending to represent them. Even Rolling Stone noted at the time that Mayfield's music carried a far stronger anti-drug message than the film it was attached to. At number 5, this is the story of an artist who couldn't stop a movie he hated from being made, so he made sure the soundtrack told the truth the film wouldn't. Number 4. By 1970, Sly Stone was the most dangerous kind of famous. His band had just electrified 500,000 people at Woodstock, and now the Black Panther Party was pressuring him directly, reportedly demanding he fire his 2 white bandmates and his white manager to make the Family Stone match the Panthers' vision of a purely militant, all-black political statement, all while Sly himself was spiraling deeper into cocaine and PCP use, missing shows and studio deadlines so often that Motown rival label CBS quietly released a greatest hits album just to buy time. Out of that pressure cooker came There's a Riot Going On, an album so intentionally murky and difficult that critics were divided right out of the gate. Recorded mostly alone by Sly overdubbing himself late into the night in the attic of his house, replacing his old joyful, integrated funk sound with something paranoid and unsettled. Even the album's title was a direct response, practically an answer record, to Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, which had dropped just months earlier and clearly rattled Sly enough to rename an album originally called Africa Talks to You.
You see it's in the blood.
Out of that chaos came the single Family Affair, a slow, hypnotic groove built on one of the first drum machines ever used on a major hit record, and it shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks, proving that even at his most disillusioned and drug-addled, Sly Stone still had the ear to craft an inescapable hit. At number 4, this is the sound of a revolutionary optimist watching his own decade collapse in real time, and somehow still landing a number 1 single in the wreckage. Number 3. In the summer of 1979, Stevie Wonder called Coretta Scott King out of nowhere and told her about a dream. He said he'd seen himself performing a song while people marched behind him carrying petition signs demanding Dr. King's birthday become a national holiday, and Mrs. King, politely doubtful, told him she wished him luck but didn't think the country was ready. Wonder didn't just write a song and move on. He sacrificed 3 full years of his recording career campaigning for that holiday, releasing Happy Birthday on his 1980 album Hotter Than July, with a full photo of Dr. King on the sleeve, then launching a 4-month national tour originally meant to feature Bob Marley, until Marley's cancer diagnosis forced Gil Scott-Heron to step in instead, culminating in a rally on the National Mall in January 1981, where over 50,000 people showed up to hear Wonder sing the very song he dreamed about, 5 days before Ronald Reagan's inauguration. In February 1982, Wonder and Coretta Scott King personally delivered a petition to the Speaker of the House containing over 6 million signatures, the largest petition in American history at that point, and even after the bill passed, North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms staged a 16-day filibuster trying to block it, at one point suggesting Dr. King had communist sympathizers. Wonder fired back publicly from a Radio City Music Hall stage, refusing to let the moment die quietly. On November 2, 1983, President Reagan signed the bill into law, with Wonder and Mrs. King standing right there in the room, and the first official Martin Luther King Day was celebrated in January 1986, with Wonder performing that same song live. At number 3, this isn't just a great record. This is a song that legally changed the American calendar. Number 2, Motown didn't want to release this song at all, but not for the reason you'd think. Motown chief Berry Gordy had already recorded it with the Temptations back in 1969, then got so nervous about how provocative and openly anti-war the lyric was that he shelved it entirely, refusing to risk the Temptations' polished, crossover-friendly image on something this blunt about Vietnam. So the song got handed instead to a Motown singer named Edwin Starr, a guy with a much smaller fan base and far less to lose. And when he recorded his own version in May 1970, he added the now iconic ad-libs, "Good God, y'all," and "Absolutely Nothing," completely on the spot, turning what could have been a straightforward protest tune into a raw, shouted, unmistakable declaration. Motown still didn't want to release it as a single until more than 4,000 college students literally flooded the label with letters demanding it, and once it finally dropped, War shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of the most successful and most quoted protest songs in American history. A genuine mainstream anthem for the anti-Vietnam movement at a moment when the country was bitterly split between so-called hawks and doves. It's since been covered by Bruce Springsteen, by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, sampled and referenced in everything from The Simpsons to modern political ads. And it all exists because Berry Gordy was too scared to let his biggest group sing it first. At number 2, this is the song Motown tried to bury, that a virtually unknown singer turned into a number 1 hit heard around the entire world. Number 1. Marvin Gaye walked into Berry Gordy's office in 1971 with a song he believed in more than anything he'd ever recorded.
Brother, brother, brother.
Inspired partly by his brother Frankie coming home from Vietnam with what we'd now recognize as PTSD, and partly by Four Top singer Obie Benson witnessing police brutality against protesters at Berkeley's People's Park. And Gordy's response, verbatim, on the record, was, "This is the worst record I've heard in my life," refusing outright to release it because he thought it was too political, too loose, too far from the polished Motown sound that had built his empire. Marvin didn't back down. He told Gordy flatly he wouldn't record another single note for Motown until What's Going On came out, even threatening to walk away from music entirely and try out for the Detroit Lions football team, despite never having played a down in his life. That's how serious he was. Motown executive Harry Balk believed in the record so much he secretly pressed and shipped 100,000 copies behind Gordy's back while Gordy was out of town. And by the time Gordy found out what had happened, the song was already the fastest-selling single in Motown's history, forcing him to eat his own words completely. The song went to number 1 on the Soul chart, hit number 2 on the Hot 100, sold over 2 million copies, and Gordy, the same man who called it the worst thing he'd ever heard, later admitted on record that it was, quote, "probably the greatest piece of work that Motown has ever put out." At number 1, this is the song that had to survive its own record label just to become one of the most important pieces of American music ever made. Marvin Gaye's What's Going On? A question this country is honestly still trying to answer. If any of these stories hit you, drop the artist name in the comments, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next countdown, and I'll see you on the next one, right here on Blue Rhythm R&B.